I never thought a July morning could shape my entire life until my parents left me at a gas station on the I-95 highway as a lesson. I was 16, skinny, quiet, and always believed that every bit of harshness from my parents was to help me grow. Gerald, my dad, and Denise, my mom, were firm believers in tough love, that strict parenting they called building character. They'd wake me up at 3 a.m. to mow the lawn just because I forgot to do it the day before. They made me walk in the rain to school for missing the bus, even though mom drove right by the school on her way to work. To them, it was all teaching me a lesson. But to me, I just grew used to the feeling of suffocating shame. That morning, we had just left my sister Sabrina's dorm after a short visit. I was lying in the back seat, groggily listening to some Linkin Park track on my iPod, a teen idol at the time. When the car pulled into a small gas station in the middle of nowhere, I barely opened my eyes when I heard my dad's voice, "Scott, go grab me a coffee." I quietly took the bill he handed me and trudged into the convenience store. The coffee machine was broken, and the old clerk behind the counter quietly brewed a fresh pot in the sticky heat. When I walked back out, holding the steaming cup, the silver Camry was gone. At first, I thought maybe they just went around to the other side to fill up. But then I saw their taillights fading into the highway. I still thought they'd come back. I was sure of it. Then the phone buzzed, a text from my mom. "Let's see how long it takes for you to get home. Consider this a survival lesson." I called, straight to voicemail. 20 minutes later, another message. "Don't call again. Your dad says you need to figure things out on your own. We'll see you when you get home." I stood there frozen, not angry, not panicked, just empty. I thought about the time they locked me out in the cold winter just because of a bad chemistry grade. I had to break the garage window to sleep inside, and they made me pay for it with my McDonald's paycheck. Standing in that sweltering heat, the coffee cooling in my hand, it hit me. I didn't need to go back anymore. I didn't need to go home, because that place was never home to begin with. I checked my wallet, 140, all the money I'd saved up from lifeguarding at the town pool over the summer. My backpack was left in the trunk, but my wallet and iPod were still in my pocket. I went back into the store and asked the old man where the nearest bus station was. "Walk about 2 miles south," he pointed. "You okay?" "I just need to make a call." I called Aunt Lola, my mom's sister, whom my family had cut off for daring to buy me a phone last year. She picked up after the second ring. "Where the hell did they leave you?" Her voice dropped after a pause. Then she told me to wait. Less than 20 minutes later, a local taxi, the kind back then no one called Uber, showed up. She'd booked a bus ticket for me online and said, "Come stay with me. Everything else can wait." I hung up, blocked my parents' number, got on the bus, and sat quietly for the 6-hour ride, watching the fields roll by outside the window. I didn't know what would come next, but I knew one thing for sure. I would never let them teach me another lesson again. 2 decades passed as if I lived in a different world. Under the small roof where Aunt Lola took me in, far away from the harsh lessons, my mom's cold sighs, or my dad's threatening frown, I began to relearn how to be human. Not a good child by their standards, but a real person. One who had the right to make mistakes, to learn, to choose my own path without fearing punishment. I earned my GED in the first year of living with Aunt Lola. Not long after, I took up mechanical repair, then residential electrical work, and eventually found my way into construction. I wasn't the best student, but I learned quickly, worked hard, and most importantly, I no longer feared learning. Aunt Lola, the first woman to hug me without conditions attached, passed away last year. I named my first daughter Annabelle, after Aunt Lola's middle name, a small tribute in the face of all the unpayable kindness. When I started my construction company, I made a rule: no answering calls during meetings. That rule held for 7 years until yesterday. When I stepped out of the meeting room, my phone was buzzing with 39 missed calls. Most were from unknown numbers. 3 were from Sabrina, my younger sister, whom I hadn't seen in 2 decades. My heart sank as I listened to the first voicemail, her voice trembling, choking on her words. "Scott, please answer. It's me, not them. I just wanted to say they've found you. They need help, but please, if you hear this, just call me back. Don't call them." The next message was from my mom. Her voice was high-pitched, fake tears choking her words. Scott, I'm sick. You can't be this cold. We're family. Another from my dad. You think you're better than us? The company you have, we helped build that. Don't forget who raised you. I sat in my car for a long time feeling conflicted. Not because I was undecided, but because I was disgusted. It took them 20 years to find me, and the first call was to demand money. I didn't need to hear anything else. I texted Sabrina one line, 7 a.m. tomorrow, Denny's on 5th, alone. If not, don't show up. She came, still skinny, her hair hastily tied up. When she sat down, I noticed her hands nervously crumpling a napkin, an old habit from when she was a child, every time Mom would yell at her. They're about to lose the house, she said almost immediately. Dad's deep in gambling debt. Mom's maxed out the credit cards. They found your company's website. They think you can help. I didn't say anything. I just stirred my coffee, my hands steady. Sabrina kept talking like the floodgates had opened. About the months living in that crumbling house after I left. About the alcohol, about the debt, about the brokenness, and how she tried to be the bridge to fix things. They're still our parents, she whispered. I looked her in the eyes. No, they were your parents. For me, they stopped being that when they left me at that gas station. Sabrina broke down. I didn't. I just put the coffee money on the table, stood up. I'll handle this, but not the way they want. And I hope you don't get involved. She nodded. But you need to know one more thing. She ran after me as I headed to the car. They know your company's address now. Tomorrow morning, they'll come looking for you. I just smiled, got in the car. Good, I said. Let's see what lessons they try to teach me next. The next day, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. Not because I was anxious, but because I wanted everything to be in order. I rescheduled all the meetings for the day. The conference room was clean, fresh coffee brewed, security cameras were set up, mini recorders ready, and even the guards were in place. I didn't want violence, but I wasn't naive enough to think they'd come just for a calm conversation. Around 9 a.m., Jenny, the receptionist, called up. Mr. Scott, there's an older couple here saying they're your parents. They urgently want to meet you. I closed my eyes for a second, then replied, send them up. I saw them through the frosted glass of my office. Gerald, my father, was much older now, his gray hair cut short. His outdated brown suit still didn't fit him like it used to. Denise, my mother, wore an old plaid dress that used to be her church dress. Thick makeup couldn't cover the signs of time under her eyes. They tried to smile, but the smile looked more twisted than friendly. As soon as they entered, my mom sniffled and raised her arms. Scott, my son, look at you. So grown up, so successful. I'm so happy. She stepped forward to hug me. I took a step back, pointing to the two chairs. Sit down, and then we'll talk. The atmosphere was heavy. My father sat upright, fingers interlocked, his gaze still sharp, like he was teaching a child. Scott, you can't keep this attitude. Family is family. After all, we just made one mistake. I squinted. One mistake? I pressed the record button, letting the red light turn on. You call leaving your 16-year-old son at a gas station in the middle of a desert a mistake? My mom cried louder, and my dad slammed his hand on the table. We came back looking for you right after. But you ran away. You ran away. I nodded coldly. Yes, I left. And that was the best decision of my life. Why are you here today? My father looked around the room. The modern design, the technical drawings covering the walls, the achievements I had built. We're blood. The reason you're able to do all this is because we raised you to be tough. You owe us. I didn't react. He continued, the house is being foreclosed. The bank is seizing it. Your mom's sick. I'm financially messed up. We need a small loan, about $175,000. For someone like you, that's just spare change. I cut him off. Right. To me now, that's not the problem. But do you know what the problem is? I opened the desk drawer and pulled out a folder. My father's eyes followed, while my mom suddenly stopped crying. I've known about your financial situation since last week. When Sabrina came here and told me you were looking for me, I had the legal team investigate. And I found I smiled slightly and placed the folder on the table. That the bank had auctioned off your debt in a private auction. They stared at me confused. I continued. And I bought the entire debt through my company. Silence hung in the air like a punch. My mom froze while my dad's lips trembled. What did you say? I am the legal owner of your house now. By law, I can ask you both to leave within 30 days. My mom screamed, "You can't do this. That's my house." I stood up, still calm. Like that gas station was my home when I was 16? When you drove away, laughing and texting, consider this a lesson? I'm teaching that same lesson again, only more grown up now. My father stood up and slammed his fist on the table. You're a piece of shit, an ungrateful son. I looked at him calmly. No, I'm the end result of the parenting style you both are so proud of. Cold, practical, and good at solving problems. I pressed the intercom button. The security guard appeared. Please escort them out. If necessary, call the police. I have plenty of evidence from today's meeting. They were escorted out. My mother was crying, my father was yelling, but I didn't turn around. Through the glass, I saw them look back one last time, like two people who had just woken up from a dream, and realized that they were the nightmare in their son's eyes. I sat down and took a sip of the now cold coffee, but inside I've never felt so calm. I thought that confrontation in the office was the climax. But no, it was only the beginning of a series of bizarre events so unbelievable that if I hadn't witnessed them with my own eyes, I probably wouldn't have believed that my parents could be so shameless. That evening, my phone buzzed incessantly. It wasn't them. It was my relatives, people I'd thought hadn't cared about my existence for the past 20 years. Uncles, aunts, cousins, they all suddenly remembered I was family, but not to check on me, but to blame me. They called me ungrateful, cold-hearted, abandoning my real parents, forgetting my roots because I'm rich now. I didn't reply, but I knew those two had started a family media campaign. They saw themselves as victims while turning me into the villain. Part of me thought about staying silent and letting it all pass. But then I remembered that cold winter night when I was 14 when they locked me outside just for a C-plus grade. I remembered sitting behind the garage, shivering, looking at the warm golden light from the living room window, where my mom was watching TV and my dad sipping beer, ignoring me in the cold. And I knew I couldn't let them tell the story their way ever again. The next morning, I opened the small wooden box I'd kept carefully for many years. Inside was the old phone that Aunt Lola had bought for me. The one thing my parents didn't know was that when they left me at that gas station years ago, I had accidentally turned on the recorder while listening to music. The device had captured the entire sound inside the car in the minutes after they left. My father's boisterous laughter, my mother saying, "Let's see how he handles this," and then my father's voice saying, "Don't come back too soon. Teach him a lesson he'll remember." I clipped the audio, saved it as a file, and opened my email. I had a list of emails, every relative who had called me. I sent them all a letter titled, "Because the Truth Was Never Fully Told." In the email, I attached the recording, pictures of birthday cards my mother once wrote that said, "If you had listened to me, I wouldn't have to be ashamed of you," and scans of old text messages. You need to learn to stand up on your own, even when your parents don't want to support you anymore. I didn't write much, just one line. If you still think I'm ungrateful, please listen again to how they loved me. By noon, Sabrina called. She was crying uncontrollably. They can't hide it anymore. The whole family knows. They, they lied about you being addicted, that you ran away because of bad habits. I used to believe it too. I didn't blame her. When I left, she was only 8. How could a child understand the darkness in their own home? That evening, I received an email from the bank. The transfer of ownership for their old property had been completed. I was officially the new owner, and I wasn't planning on keeping it for long. The following week, I contacted the design team, not to build a mansion, but to develop it into an affordable housing complex with 20 small apartments, prioritizing single mothers and children who had been victims of domestic abuse. I named the project Annabelle Haven as a thank you to the one who saved me from the swamp of my childhood. A place that was once a symbol of hurt now would be a place for new beginnings and hope. When the construction permit was approved, I made one final call to my parents, not to negotiate, but to invite them to the groundbreaking ceremony. If you want to see the result of 20 years of parenting, then come. They came. Of course they came. That day, Aunt Lola came too, the person they once derided as the family destroyer. She just stood beside me, her hand tightly holding mine. They, on the other hand, trembled, standing on the other side of the safety boundary marked by the red tape of the construction site. My mother screamed as the first excavator clawed through the rose garden she had lovingly tended. My father yelled about suing. But sue for what? I legally owned the land, and I was using it for the community's benefit. All the paperwork was in order. I stood still, holding my cup of coffee. I didn't smile. I didn't speak. But inside, something lightened, like the heavy wall that had surrounded me for years just collapsed, making room for the light. That morning, the sky was unusually clear. The sunlight pierced through the thin mist, reflecting off the sidewalk of the land where their house had once stood. The house that held bitter memories. The cold winter nights I shivered outside because I was locked out. The meals with voices shouting louder than spoons clattering in bowls. And now, where that house used to be, there was nothing but an empty lot, waiting to be reborn into something more beautiful. I arrived early, bringing 2 folding chairs and a thermos of hot coffee. Not to offer it to them, but to savor the moment I'd been waiting for 20 years. Not for revenge, but for justice. A little while later, they showed up. Dad, Mom, and a suitcase, probably for temporary lodging. They didn't say anything. They just looked at me. Mom held up an old photo, me at 6 years old, smiling brightly next to the Christmas tree, and raised it towards me, almost as if hoping I'd feel guilty. I didn't feel guilty. I just saw a child in that photo who once believed a smile could earn love, and I felt sorrow for that child. They quietly followed me into the temporary office near the construction site. This time, there were no tears, no shouting, just the silence of those who had just lost the last thing they could rely on: blood ties. My father, for the first time in his life, lowered his voice. "We don't have anywhere else to go. Your mother, she's very sick. She needs to go to the hospital. We have no place left to go. We're sorry. We know we were wrong." He tried to touch my hand. I pulled away, opened the drawer, and took out a stack of papers. The next day, I sat them down. "This is the rental application," I said, placing the papers on the table. "The new building will have 20 units, prioritized for people facing hardship. Everyone must go through a credit check and an interview. You two are no exception." My mother started crying. "You're going to make us live next to unemployed people? Addicts?" I looked at her, emotionless. "No, I'm making you live among people who were once abandoned by their families, who almost froze to death on cold nights with nowhere to turn. They're the kind of people you'll have to call neighbors, if you can pass the screening." My father slammed the table, shouting like he used to, "After everything we've done for you." I nodded. "Yes, exactly. After everything you did, this is where we are today." They left, their shoulders shaking with anger. Rejected not by harsh words, but by things that were legal, civilized, and calm. My mother looked back one last time, tears welling in her eyes. "You're no longer my son." I remained silent, because in truth I hadn't been for a long time. The following week, I held the groundbreaking ceremony. There were local reporters, some charity organizations, and a small group of people who would be the future residents of Annabelle Haven. They brought with them hope, the same hope I had lost when I was 16, and now I was giving it back to people like I was back then. I took the mic and gave a brief speech. Everyone deserves a new beginning. No matter how bad your past was, you can still be the first in your family to break the cycle of pain. This is a place for people like that. The speech ended. The first excavator began to break the ground. I stood still, feeling like for the first time in my life, I was building a real home, not with bricks and cement, but with something my parents never understood to give: unconditional kindness. That night I came home. Annabelle was waiting for me at the door, holding a crayon drawing, a house with sunshine, trees, 4 people, and a smiling dog. I hugged her tightly. I didn't need to teach her through pain, coldness, or fear like I had experienced. I just needed to love her, enough so she would never have to question whether she deserves love. And in the end, I knew. My journey didn't end when the old house collapsed. It had just begun, at the place where I chose to rebuild from scratch, with my hands, my heart, and the scars that had shaped me into the man I am today. Some wounds never fully heal, but from them we can choose to build something better. Not for revenge, but to heal ourselves and others like us. I am no longer the child left at the gas station all those years ago. I am a father, a business owner, and above all, I am the last person in my family to break the toxic cycle that seemed like it would never stop. And if you're hearing this story, perhaps you're walking a rugged path of your own. Don't forget, you're not alone. You're not the product of your past. You're the one who writes the next chapter. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment, share the video to spread the message, and don't forget to subscribe for more meaningful stories. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next journey. Goodbye.